Hey guys, Frightener22 here, and welcome back to the season finale of Frightener22's Saturday Night Movie Drive-In. And as I had mentioned last week, tonight we're going to be taking a look at the first film I ever saw, and one of my favorite horror films of all time, if not my favorite. Yes, we're taking a look at Wes Craven's 1984 classic film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, as I had stated, this is actually the first film I ever saw. Yeah, believe that. I had some pretty fucking cool parents back in the day. Well, it's like one of those things where people are like, well, how could A Nightmare on Elm Street, a rated R film, be your favorite, be the first movie that you ever actually saw? And I don't know, it just kind of worked out that way. I mean, I think that there was just like, a different kind of way of looking at things, and people can, were just really, easily, be able to dismiss what's real and what's unreal and stuff. And I mean, it was just, okay for, a horror film to be on, and I just got hooked into seeing Freddy. It's my first actual memory of ever seeing a film is A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I mean, what a great fucking film to ever be introduced to, the world of cinema. So, let's go ahead and get right into the plot. So, for any film buff, or especially a horror fan who has never heard of A Nightmare on Elm Street, here's the nutshell version of the plot. It deals with and focuses on a girl named Nancy Thompson, who's played by Heather Langenkamp, and she's dealing with these really grisly nightmares of this burnt man wearing a striped shirt, and he has razors for fingernails on his hand, and he is stalking her in her dreams, trying to kill her. And the dreams are just becoming a little bit too real for words, and coincidentally all of her best friends, as well as her boyfriend, who's played by Johnny Depp in his first movie role ever, are all experiencing the same nightmares involving the same man, who turns out to be none other than the infamous Freddy Krueger. So, when attempts to go to the police to, unveil that there's actually, a stalker in her dreams that are trying to kill her and her friends, obviously the police easily dismiss this as just crazy talk. And then it, isn't until Nancy just has to, go into her dreams herself and face the dream demon on her own to take care of matters. Now, this film, the main thing that I can really say about it, I mean, this film debuted in November of 1984, so we're looking at, over, 25 years now that the original Nightmare 1, was given birth to in the world, and I believe that it is a film that still holds up incredibly well. I mean, the frights and, the jumps in this movie will get you like no other horror film that I've ever experienced. I mean, I remember being piss scared of this movie when I was a kid. I mean, there's just that iconic image of, Freddy stalking Nancy's best friend, Tina, who's played by Amanda Weiss. Many of you guys might actually remember her from being in such films as Better Off Dead with John Cusack from 1985. And, she's being stalked in her nightmare. And that's the cool thing, is that, like, in this film, you think, oh, it's in a nightmare, nothing can, obviously, Freddy's going to come out, but the thing that's done so well by Craven and the makers of this film is that you never really know what's a nightmare and what's, reality in the film. So, you just immediately think that when something's going on, it's like, oh, it's a nightmare, she should probably wake up because she's going to be killed. But there's just such a fine line between what's dreams and, what's the real world, and that just, lends itself to, the creep factor in this film. But like I was saying, there's just that iconic image of Nancy's best friend, Tina, in, this alleyway. And the first actual time that you see Freddy Krueger on screen, he's being, covered up really well by nice usage of shadows, and he just has this really terrifying effect where his arms are just extended like 6 feet out, and his claws are just scraping the side of the wall. And Tina just goes, "Oh God," and then his first words ever spoken, he raises his claw to his face and says, "This is God." I just think that that is probably one of the most powerful and, effective entries for any villain in the history of film. It's unbelievable. It blows your mind, and that image of Freddy will forever be embedded in your mind for as long as you live. It's just incredibly frightening. So, from then on in, Freddy is just constantly stalking these kids through their nightmares, obviously. And, I mean, it just gets creepier and creepier, the longer that they try and stay up. And seeing as help from outside forces turns out to be useless. The murders just continue to be mounting up. All of Nancy's friends eventually become offed, including her boyfriend, as I had stated, played by Johnny Depp, who lives directly across the street from her, ends up being killed, so it's entirely up to her. There's a great, wonderful cast in this, and I mean, it just, one of the great things that you need to appreciate about Elm Street is the young talent that was garnered in this film. I mean, it's just, by today's standards, you just don't see it, like how these kids do it. I mean, now it's just, kids that just look way too polished and they look way too pretty to really be believable. But these kids just really hit the nail on the head. All of them are really stunning, from Heather Langenkamp to Johnny Depp to Amanda Weiss, as well as Jesu Garcia, who plays Tina's boyfriend, Rod. He goes by the name Nick Corey, I know. Some of you guys might actually recall him. He was most recently seen in the last few years in Along Came Polly with Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston. So you guys might see him playing a small supporting role in that film, but everybody's really spot on this. You have the iconic John Saxon playing Nancy's father, and he plays the lieutenant of the police department in Springwood, the town that they reside in, and he plays a really, empowering father figure and a great cop character. So, just having his presence in this great film is incredible. In addition, of course, you have the wonderfully multi-talented Robert Englund playing the infamous dream killer Freddy Krueger. And I mean, what more could you say about Robert Englund? I mean, he gave birth to this incredible, iconic character, and he came back to do it for 7 movies after that, leading all the way up to 2003's Freddy vs. Jason. And Robert is just incredible in this. I mean, he scares the living shit out of you. He stays in the shadows. The jumps in this are completely unexpected. You never see them coming, and I mean, still to this day, I'm 22 years old. If I watch this film late at night downstairs, I find myself hurrying to the TV to remove the DVD out and running upstairs, because it's just, this film really gets in your head. I mean, that was the scariest thing about, ending this movie and walking away from it. But, with any horror film, you can walk out of a theater and just be like, oh, the movie's over. I mean, the lights are up, I'm going home. But for me, that's where the real terror really started for, A Nightmare on Elm Street, is that, no, you're going home to go to sleep eventually, and that's where the real nightmare is going to begin after you see this movie. Freddy gets you in your dreams. There's nowhere to run to. So, I mean, that lasting impression that you get from watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, just can't be matched by any other horror film. I mean, I grew up on this movie, and I still preach this movie as, one of the best horror films ever made. And, I mean, just take a peek on it for yourself, because I'm sure that you guys, anybody that is a lover of horror films can, obviously give credit where credit is due, and, see that Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street is just a classic, iconic horror film that, meets the needs on gore, scares, and just an overall really tight and well-told story. Of course, you have, the upcoming 2010 remake that's, hitting theaters, of course, April 30th. And, a lot of people must be, wondering, one of my favorite films of all time, how do I feel about it? And, of course, when something like that so, close to your heart is being remade, I mean, of course, instinct sets in, you don't want to see it remade, but as teaser images came in and trailers came in, and of course the casting of Jackie Earle Haley, which is the only actor I would have preferred if they wouldn't have gotten Robert Englund back. That's the only person I would have approved, and they got him to play Freddy Krueger. So overall, I'm actually really hopeful that this remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street is probably, in my opinion at this point, it definitely has the potential to be the best remake or re-imaging that Platinum Dunes has ever done. So I really hope to be, pleasantly surprised on how good it possibly is. So I absolutely will be doing an At the Movies review of that. I definitely will be going out to the midnight screening of that, so you guys can definitely be on the lookout for that review sometime next week. But the copy that I was reviewing is actually the old DVD from the Nightmare on Elm Street box from a few years back. A Nightmare on Elm Street just hit Blu-ray on April 13th, I believe. And I just didn't have the time to actually get it before this review, but according to reports on Blu-ray.com, the Blu-ray transfer is overall really, really good. I believe they gave it a 4.0 out of 5.0 for audio, visual, everything. So I'm really, really excited to see A Nightmare on Elm Street in high def. So, in closing, guys, thanks again for tuning in to this season of Frightener 22's Saturday Night Movie Drive-In, and get your asses out there and check out 1984's classic A Nightmare on Elm Street. But once you guys are done viewing the film, whatever you do, do not fall asleep. Thanks again, guys.